Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audiophiles. I'm Jim Carter. I am going to discuss today whether I think records are too expensive nowadays. This has come about recently just because I've seen in Facebook groups and other forums and things like that people are starting to complain that records are just getting too expensive, too out of control from a price perspective, and mainly referring to new releases, but it's definitely referring to the used market as well. So I wanted to kind of touch base on that and kind of give my opinion on it, and also would love to hear what you guys have to say too, because I'm sure you all have some strong opinions on that. So, one of the things I want to talk about is the cost of making a record, especially in comparison to a CD or obviously a download, because a download is, there's virtually no cost to that except for, server space essentially. But basically, when it comes to making a actual physical vinyl record, there is a big multi-step process that needs to be done that it doesn't need to be done on things like CDs. So, kind of a brief rundown. I know probably most of you know this already, but, I'm kind of going to give a Cliff Notes version because I'm not going to go into extreme detail on every single little step. But basically, the first step is having to kind of create the vinyl. They have to cut into a lacquer, one groove on each side for all the music. And they need to make sure that it is cut precisely and properly so you don't get skipping and you don't get so you can't hear, I can't remember the technical term, but how sometimes you can hear that the music like 5 seconds before it starts and maybe a second or two after it ends and things like that. They need to do everything they can to try to avoid that and avoid all the other types of distortions that can come about from playing back a record that's been cut. So once that's done and done well, which is hard and it's an art and not many people can do it well, then you need to basically create the stampers to stamp and press the records. Then you need to actually do the pressing of the records. So all of that stuff is manual labor. And there's a lot of steps involved between cutting the record to pressing the record that cost money to do. Where, CDs, basically a lot of it's automated at this point, and it's ultra cheap to create a CD. The only reason why they were expensive back in the old days when they first came out was because they were new technology, so they could get more for them. It was a supply and demand type of a thing that they could promote. Hey, this is perfect technology and going to be better sound quality than anything you've heard before, and because of that, we've got to charge an extra amount for that. So now things have kind of reversed because the reality is CDs are much, much, much cheaper to manufacture and distribute. Because not only are they, is the process for making them cheaper, but obviously shipping them is going to be cheaper too because they're much smaller. So that being said, we've got that out of the way. So records do technically cost more to manufacture, to create. Whether they are worth the extra money that you have to pay for them in comparison to a CD, in other words, do they cost so much more to manufacture that they need to charge double or sometimes triple what the CD costs? That's definitely debatable, and I would say in most cases it might not. But the thing that you also have to keep in mind is, even though vinyl is making a resurgence and from a revenue standpoint, it's actually starting to make more revenue than CDs, it's still not outselling by a unit count than CDs, which means the manufacturing costs per record go way up because you've got all this extra process that has to go about, whether it's making sure you're finding, especially in a reissue, let's say, finding the proper tapes for the cutting of the lacquer, the creating of the stampers and all that process that goes into that, the pressing of the records, and if you want to have super good high quality control it's going to cost you some more money, because now you have to have someone physically looking at the records to make sure the quality control is set properly. So the costs per record definitely goes up in comparison to CDs, just because the process is more expensive, and because they're making less records than they are CDs, the cost per disc or per record is definitely higher. That being said, I don't think that the cost is double or triple what a CD would be, in terms of, I don't think that they should, like, let's say for argument's sake, a CD is $12. I don't think that a record is going to be $12 or $15 or $20 more to make, or even, $5 or $10 more per disc to make. But, I could be wrong on that part. But regardless, no, I don't think vinyl is, from a cost perspective, going to be something that you should have to pay double or triple for. But the big situation with that is, it's all a question of supply and demand. And, if people are spending that kind of money, guess what? You're going to get charged that kind of money. I've typically found that, I've probably been buying new vinyl now again for, I don't know, 9 or 10 years maybe now again. I stopped for a while and started back up. But I haven't really noticed a gigantic cost increase over that time period. I mean, most records are still, $25-ish range, sometimes $30, with the occasional ones being in the $20 to $25 range. Most of the major label, major artist ones are definitely in that $25 to $30 range, with double albums being, in the $30 to $35, sometimes $40 range. There are always obviously exceptions, with things like deluxe editions or colored vinyl, or, limited edition exclusive ones. Or I've actually seen which I think is really odd and kind of unusual in a sense that they're probably digital recordings, is, newer rap and hip hop, stuff from Kanye West, or the other one is escaping me right now, but there's another artist that I actually like. Name's escaping, but their records are like $45 for a double record, and that's just insane to me. I just, especially, like I said, since it's probably a digital recording to begin with, it really doesn't seem to make much sense to me why you would pay that kind of extra money to get those records. So, so do I think records are too expensive? Some are. I will typically not buy a new release if it sells for over $30. $29.99 is kind of typically my threshold. There are some very rare exceptions to that. Like if I know the history of the process I went through to make that record, and I know that, time and care was spent to do it, I might spend a little extra on it. But generally speaking, $30 is kind of my threshold. But to me, records are more expensive to make, and I understand that. But once you start hitting that $30 to $35 range, I think that's starting to go a little too far. And there's definitely a lot of them out there that are like that, and I've complained about them in previous videos. But stuff like Paul McCartney's Flaming Pie, that 2-record set, I want to say was like $40 or something like that, which just, to me, yes, it was packaged well, it sounded good, it was pressed well, and that was the only reason why I bought it, because I knew that those typically sound good. But once you're starting hitting that $40 plateau, now you're talking about pricing that you would typically pay for an audiophile release. And most records that are brought out by a major label are not at the level of an audiophile release. So I don't feel I see the value in that. So, but that's what I have to say about that. I would love to hear your input. Do you think records are getting too expensive? The other side of this is, used records by far are just getting outrageous. But, we can talk about that maybe at another time. But they're definitely outrageous now. But I would love to hear your thoughts on the subject, and whether you think new release records are too expensive or are getting too expensive. Again, my take, typical regular new releases, not limited editions, or I mean, all of them are limited editions, but not super limited edition color or any of that kind of stuff. I don't think they're much more expensive or any more expensive than they have been for the past 10 years or so. But I would like to see them all around $20 or so. But I'd love to hear your take and see what you think. Maybe $25 for a double record. But what do you think? Do you think that that new release vinyl is too expensive? And again, I'm not talking about audiophile stuff. I'm talking about just the regular new releases. Or do you think that they should get what the market bears for it, especially if the artist is going to be compensated better for it? It's a tough call because you have to keep that in mind as well. Physical releases are not selling as well as they used to, and it's the best way they can make their money back from their new music releases that they have, because they're certainly not getting it from streaming. So, but I would love to hear what you have to say about it. I still buy new records. I have my stipulations in terms of what I'll spend on pricing, but I really want to hear what you have to say. So if you liked what you saw here, please subscribe to my channel and like the video. And if you want to know when my new stuff comes out, please hit that alert button. So that's what I have for today. Thanks a lot, and you have a great day.